Have you ever felt like your creativity isn't enough or that your artistic endeavors are secondary to everything on your to-do list? Have you tried all the strategies only to find yourself struggling with this yet again? Today, I have the immense pleasure of exploring these common problems with my client, Carolyn Fallert. While writing always called to Carolyn, she didn't start out as a writer. At one point, she dismissed it as indulgent and like a side hobby you pursued when you had extra time. But when she burned out after a career at an international recruitment firm, she discovered what writing could do for her if she could not just make time, but protect her time and the way she sees her art. During today's conversation, we explore the impact of familial and cultural socialization and how strategies aren't enough. You need to understand yourself. It's time to grab your pen, open your heart, and get ready to discover the importance of understanding your unique operating system and how it should determine the strategies you use. Let's get started. Welcome to Writing Your Resilience, a podcast for writers who want to create stories that change lives, especially their own. I'm your host, Lisa Cooper Ellison. As a writer and trauma-informed writing coach, I'm here to guide you on a transformative journey through the art of writing, self-discovery, and resilience. Each week, I'll share my best tricks, tips, and strategies to help you write more authentically, craft deeper, truer stories, and overcome the common storytelling roadblocks we all face. Together, we'll explore how to bounce back when life gets tough and stay connected to your inner calling. So grab your pen, your notebook, and an open heart. It's time to do the work that changes the world, one story at a time. Writers, I am interrupting this episode to share something I am super excited about. Over the years, I have worked with so many writers who struggle to understand when to slow down, speed up, or leap ahead in their memoirs. That's why I am teaming up with Jane Friedman on April 16th to teach Managing the Present in Memoir, techniques for navigating time in your storytelling. During this 90-minute webinar, you'll learn how to identify the moments to contract or expand so you avoid slow starts, sagging middles, runaway scenes, and so much more. This class is perfect for memoirists dealing with multiple timelines, feedback on confusing narratives, or stories that just feel too long. Best of all, it's just $25. So if you want to keep readers engaged from start to finish, sign up for Managing the Present in Memoir today and master the art of time and storytelling by going to janefriedman.com/Managing the Present in Memoir with Lisa Cooper Ellison, or you can just click on the link in the show notes. Well, hello, Carolyn. Welcome to the Writing Your Resilience podcast. I am so happy to have you on today.
I am thrilled to be here.
Well, what's exciting is you and I have worked together for, how long has it been? A year and a half? Almost 2 years?
Yeah, almost 2 years, I think.
Oh my gosh, time goes by so fast when you're having fun.
Yes.
And I always have fun working with you. So I'm really excited to introduce people to you and to talk through your question about the writing process. So I'm going to begin with you. What would you like us to know about you and your writing?
Yeah. Well, for all of the listeners, I want people to know that I did not start my career in writing. I actually have a background in applied mathematics and in business management. I worked as a management consultant for several years, helped manage an international recruiting firm, and actually burned out in my old job and had always loved writing for fun and very falsely kind of dismissed it as like indulgent and kind of like a side hobby. And it was during COVID, I had left a job and was kind of in limbo between things and decided that I was going to give writing a go in a more serious and dedicated way. And it's been now 4.5, almost 5 years of really dedicated practice in creative writing. And I have to say, I am so much more connected with myself, so much more grounded in who I am, really being rooted in a creative writing practice and shifting careers. My parents think that I'm crazy. The big shift, I think, surprised a lot of people. But where I am now in this creative writing journey, I was working on a first project with Lisa for a couple of years, and I got really stuck. And one of the best pieces of advice that Lisa gave me was that when I was feeling stuck on that first project, to pick up something new.
Yeah.
So I'm now working on a book about my personal journey, learning the practice of self-defense as someone who has experience with assault. And what's interesting, working on this book, it started as a book about the practice of physical self-defense, and it's going much deeper into this place of practicing more of a metaphysical self-defense. So, what does it look like to defend space to be the most authentic versions of ourselves? And I'm learning so much just from writing the book. We'll see where it leads me in terms of whether it ends up being out in the world and published for people to read. My hope is that, whatever kind of learning, revelations, and healing I get for myself, that one day that will also be accessible to readers.
Well, I have no doubt that it will. And I think one of the greatest joys for me is I remember when we first started working together, you already had some amazing writing chops. I love that you have this math background. I'm going to start sending all my math problems to you. But you have this really eclectic background, but you already had these strong foundational skills, but a lot of doubt. And what I love and looking at you today is seeing the light in your eyes. There is a joy that I didn't see when we first started working together. And it's just like my heart is singing.
Absolutely. I feel that. I remember the first conversation we had. I was like spinning with this first book draft that I was working on and describing the process to you of
Yeah.
like writing, redoing my outline, writing, redoing my outline, and kind of like going in this spiral. And you described it so perfectly where you were like, Carolyn, it sounds like you are in the middle of the ocean, swimming in circles and you, as a coach, invited to come in and point me toward land
Yeah.
and help me start to swim toward the direction of the shore. And it was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment because I was exhausted from swimming in circles on the writing process. And from the moment that we started working together, you helped me access kind of like that inner intuition of finding that compass of like which direction I should be headed to get to land, to invite a lot more ease and joy in the writing process itself. And yeah, it's just been a joy working together.
And what I love about the full circle of that metaphor is that, yeah, I could see the exhaustion in your eyes, and you were working so hard and swimming in the middle of that ocean. And you have this wonderful Instagram, and you had a recent post where you were just swimming so well, like doing these laps so powerfully, so strongly. And I love that because I used to be a really strong swimmer when I was younger. And now I don't have this like kind of like kicky leg that like kicks out to the side. I am not as strong of a swimmer, but I loved seeing that because I feel like it's this incredible metaphor of like, yeah, you were in the ocean. I pointed you towards the shore. You got on the shore, you rested, you got the skills you needed, you figured it out. And now you are swimming so well on your own. And that's beautiful.
Yes, I love that. And there is so much power being in the water. It's amazing. Like we talk a lot about kind of the psychological experience of writing memoir and how so much of being able to process things as we're writing about them is not just a cognitive practice, but also a physical
Yes.
practice. And I know this from a lot of the yoga practice that I do, even in self-defense practice. But one of my favorite things to do after writing is actually to go for a swim. And I think part of it is that bilateral movement in the water, especially with a freestyle stroke. My body and my mind simultaneously like move through things that I've written about and letting it really move through my body and let it go.
I love that. This is the perfect segue to talk about your question. So you came in with a question. Can you
Yes.
tell us what that is?
Yeah, so being steeped in the practice of self-defense, one of my questions for you as a writer and a creative is how you think about protecting both time and energy for your writing and your creative practice. And then not just the time and the energy for your writing, but also how you protect its worth.
Yeah, that is an amazing question or set of questions. And there's a way that I would have answered this, I don't know, maybe even a year ago, that's different than how I would answer it now. And I think I can talk about the basics. And actually, Lilly Dancyger, I interviewed her on the day that we are recording this. Her episode airs. And she talked about having a calendar and blocking it off. And she actually colors the day out in pink to say, like, no, 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 no. Like, it cannot schedule anything else. And I think, scheduling things, making things sacred, making sure that you have time, doing it first thing in the morning, if that works for you, the earlier the better, is helpful because then you set the tone for your day. So those are all great strategies. And I do try to use them as much as I can. And life gets in the way, right? And sometimes I go through busy seasons and I don't have time to write. So what do you do when you're in those seasons and how do you come back from it? I think routines are fantastic. And I have lived by routines throughout my whole life, but sometimes the routines aren't enough. Like, what if I have a dentist appointment in the morning, right? Do you know how hard it is to reschedule a dentist appointment?
My dentist is scheduling a year out now, so
Yeah. Yeah. So it takes a long time. So sometimes things are going to come up in your day, or you may find that the problem isn't your process. The problem is that you are trying to work against your nature. And so that is one of the things that I am beginning to really think about for myself. And so we're going to talk about the nature piece, and then we're going to talk about the value piece. One of the things that I have been studying is human design. So in a few weeks, I'm going to have someone who is a specialist in human design come on, but I'm going to just give you the bare bones basics as I understand it right now. Your human design is basically a report that gives you a sense of who you are, and it's based on astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah numbers. It's based on all of these different systems, quantum physics, all of this stuff. And what it does is it gives you a sense of how you operate in the world. Where does your energy come from? How do you use your energy? What are the obstacles that get in your way? And sometimes people will come against these things, like Enneagrams is another system or way of thinking about things. And people will wonder, like, oh, well, is there a legitimacy to this? And so I'm going to say something. I was at the Psychotherapy Networkers Conference last weekend, and I don't know a lot about them other than they are patterns of personality, right? So they're patterns of personality, and that's all I can tell you about it. But someone wrote to me, that is not based in science, and this is crap. And, they wrote to me, and people have their own opinions, and they are welcome to them. So thank you very much for opinions. But I wondered, like, okay, is this legitimate? So I was actually in a session with Dancyger, who is one of the foremost researchers on attachment theory. He has done so much scientific research, right, based solely on the scientific method. And he came up with this entire system for how to think about attachment theory and how your temperament and attachment wounds come together to create personality. And it came up with 9 different patterns that largely match the Enneagram. And when I was in this talk with this highfalutin scientist, and he started talking about it, it also matches what I know about human design. Okay, so it was fantastic.
that is wild.
Yes. It was amazing to have this scientist validate things that I knew intuitively were right. We all have different ways that we operate in the world. And I'm just going to talk specifically about myself. So for me, I'm a generator. There are about 33% of people who are generators. We are people who have almost unlimited energy. We are the makers and the creators of the world, right? That's what we do. And I'm also an Aries. So I have a lot of fire, and I can have a lot of like, come and go do it, right? That's part of my nature. So when people say, like, how do you do all of this stuff, Lisa? Where does your energy come from? It comes from inside. I just really do have that. It's not made up. The thing is that generators, the way we're supposed to think about our opportunities in the world is to wait for things to come to you and then really connect with your yes and your no internally. We're not necessarily supposed to go out and find the new opportunity. We let the opportunities come to us, and we pay attention to where they are in the world. And then we think about that yes and no. And this is related to how we think about our writing. I have tons of energy, but there are certain parts of my makeup that don't work quite as well. I have so much will that I could share it with other people and I would have will left over. But my motivation can be a little shaky. And it's not that I'm not a motivated person. You work with me, you know that I'm a motivated person. But directing my motivation and direction can sometimes be a challenge. And that's because I need other people. I need to feed off of their energy. So when I think about my writing time, yes, I write alone, but sometimes it's easy for me to give that away because my motivation requires me to be in connection with other people. So what I found is like this Aikido style of self-defense, right? Which Aikido is like working with the energy, pulling the energy in and using that against the person, is to say, okay, I know this is how I am. How can I be in writing groups where we are doing generative work, which is one of the things you're doing, but how can I do that where I'm not the leader? Right? Because I don't always have to be the leader. I have other people that I do this with. And so I am drafting off of their energy and it feeds everyone, right? So it's this wonderful way of using my sensitivities and knowing about my motivation to figure out what works best for me. And it may be vastly different for you. So I think
Yeah.
really understanding that makeup is helpful. And I'm going to be quiet here for a second to see what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's such an abundance of wisdom in that, and it's really, really powerful. So, I've completed a yoga teacher training, and two of the requirements in this training were to do an astrology reading and also a numerology reading. And before having done either of them, I would have been like, oh, this woo-woo stuff, like I don't believe in it at all. Where is the scientific evidence? Or like I need my mathematical
Right.
proof. And I honestly would not have done it if it wasn't required as part of getting the certification. In both the conversation with the astrologist and the numerologist, I was blown away by their ability to pinpoint really accurate dimensions of my personality. For an astrology, numerology, if it's human design, whatever framework you want to use, I think whether or not people believe in them from a scientific perspective, there's a lot of power in having someone kind of put a mirror up to you
Yes,
and to be able to look at that reflection and say, does that resonate? Does it not?
exactly.
And are there elements here that seem surprising to me that I never thought of before? And I think both the astrology reading and the numerology did that for me. And part of the dimension of it was really validating in that in both of the readings, they kind of mirrored back to me that a lot of the way that I work is I'm incredibly humanitarian, like care deeply about people and about society and about community and wanting to be generous and giving and supportive. And for me to show up to any of that work, I am a deeply introverted person. And so I have to refill my well of energy with a lot of solitude
Yes.
and a lot of self-reflection. And so what's interesting, hearing you talk about human design, it resonates so much kind of thinking about even my writing process that to be able to sit down and write, I have to start with a well of energy and a well of creative inspiration. And the way that you get to that, I think, is different for every single person. And part of what I've been learning about myself over the past 4 years is how do I start to cultivate that energy for myself? Because the way I cultivate it for me is different from the way that you would cultivate it for you, which is different from the next person. I'm thinking about some of the connections to self-defense in all of this. And, one of the primary practices of self-defense is being able to listen to your inner intuition and your like inner wisdom. I think Glennon Doyle talks about it as inner wisdom. When I can tap into that inner wisdom and knowledge, that's the source that kind of tells me what I need to be able to refill my energy to then return to the page or to have things to give to the page. So everything that you're talking about resonates really deeply.
I love that. And I love that you said that, it's different for everyone and really understanding what that is for you and tapping into that intuition is helpful. And the fact that you need to fill your cup first. And that's, I think, true for everyone. How you fill your cup is going to be different. But in order to be able to write, you have to have your nervous system set to a dial or a channel, we'll say, that is both relaxed and awake, like sense of awakeness and openness to possibilities and to what's around you, and enough relaxation that your amygdala, which is where you get your motivation from, is not focusing on danger, that fight or flight. So everyone is going to figure out what that is for them. But I think understanding your makeup and how you work and how you do things is how you do some of these strategies. Like, okay, if you know all of these things, then you can put the time in your schedule and you're going to feel confidence that it's going to work because you understand what you
Yeah.
need. And, then you can use the Pomodoro method, which is write for a certain amount of time, take a break. You can do all of the different things that help people with productivity because you understand who you are and you've tapped into that. So having spaces where you are quiet, whether that's quiet with others, quiet with self, is really important. And I think that's about the process, right? How do we protect our time by understanding what we need, not just implementing strategies? And then there's that more psychological piece of how do we value this enough to supersede some of our conditioning. I was in a class and I'm going to ask you this question. The question was, if you got $1 million, what would you do with it? And I want you to just think about, like, I'm handing you a check for $1 million. Tell me the first ideas that come to your mind.
I mean, the instinct is to want to share it right
Yeah.
off the bat, to give it away. Like, I could list off dozens of organizations that are doing incredible and really valuable work in the world right now, resisting some of the chaos that's happening in our country. And so my instinct is to want to give it to those organizations and empower them to use it in the way that they want and need to.
And that was my first inclination, was like, oh, I'll start a foundation. Oh, I'll do this. I'll give it to this group, that group. Immediately, there was no thought of like, oh, I'll go on a vacation or I will, do these other things. And I think we have our nature and then we have conditioning. And as women, we have the conditioning that we are supposed to nurture others. And we also have hormones that kind of also support that. And so some of that nurturing is like divorce yourself from your own experience, take care of others over self. And then we can have our histories, right? And then that's about the internal messages that we have. So it's a multi-layered thing that can happen. So I think one of the things you need to do is understand what are the stories that you are telling yourself? What are the stories that the world is telling you that
Mm.
influence what you value and what you see as your value? Because I work with so many women in particular who feel like writing is trivial or it's the thing I have to push off to the side because I need to be making money and I need to be doing X, Y, and Z for my family or for my spouse or whomever, right? I need to be seen as productive. And this work that makes me feel alive, makes me feel whole, is not necessarily quote unquote productive. And I'm going to call bullshit on that right now. That's not true. If you feel alive, you're going to be more productive and you're actually going to be a better human being to everyone.
Yeah, so listening to you talk about that, it's making me think about a book that I picked up just a couple weeks ago. It was recently published. The title is We Need Your Art by Amie McNee. I believe I'm saying her name correctly. She has an incredible presence on Instagram. A lot of her videos and posts on Instagram are just like exactly what I need to hear as an artist. But what's amazing is the first two or three chapters of this book are all about how our society values art and creativity relative to work that makes money. And that is in the structure of capitalism. She talks a lot about like how the value in countries is measured by GDP. The value of art is not in those numerical measures in the same way. And she talks about the value of art on so many different dimensions. She actually references a lot of scientific research that talks about how both creating art and consuming art can rewire the way our brains work, and even like on a cellular level help with whether it's recovering from PTSD or more like chronic illness situations. She talks about the value of art in terms of like building really cohesive communities and bringing people together. Yeah, there's a lot there. But hearing you talk was like recalling this book for me. And as I've been reading it, it's made me realize how many internalized messages I have about art either being valuable or not, or important or not. In some situations, I can pinpoint like a specific person in my life who has said something about the artistic work that I'm doing and how that, small thing that they said just once kind of like implants in my brain
Yes.
and then plays on repeat a little bit. And how so much of the process of like reclaiming the value of whether it's whatever type of artwork, and in this context specifically, the value of our writing, to be able to do that, I have to comb through, identify those messages that I've internalized, and really intentionally let them go.
Yes, that's the aikido of protecting your art, right? Is you have to understand what they are, sit with them for a minute, and then, yeah, work with them to let them go, because the reality is they're false, but we can take on other people's things. And what I would say is that if you are a writer, and that's for all of you listeners, it's likely that you are a sensitive person. Sensitivity is an amazing gift. It is an enormous gift. And I don't want to use the word liability. Okay. I don't want to use that. It is a precious gift that must be protected, because the world's energy and messages can get glom onto you and make you forget your own truth. And so I think, yeah, the more you can clear yourself of that, the more you're going to be able to protect it, because you're going to be really clear. And I think if you aren't clear yet, you're like, well, how do I know what this means? Why I should be doing this? Figure out your why, right? What is your why? And I'll say that my why do I write? I write because when I write, I feel alive. I feel fully alive. I feel fully aligned with who I am. And it does not matter if it's for other people or if it's for myself. I feel fully aligned. And when I feel fully aligned, I am a better person. That is my number one why. And then, of course, each project I do will have a why, but that's the kind of thing you want to have for yourself. And I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you have a sense of what your why is?
Oh, that's such a fantastic question. When it's interesting, I think if you would have asked me this a couple of years ago, again, kind of like, oh, if I gave you this $1 million, what would you do with it? My initial answer to that question would be that, I write to connect with other people, or I write to give to other people, or to share something with other people. And I think what I've realized more and more over the past couple of years is that there's some social conditioning in that, in terms of like, oh, if I'm going to create, it has to be for someone else.
Right.
And something that I've realized is that actually the most powerful and rewarding creative work that I've done is the creative work that I do for myself first. When I say that I do it for myself, I do it because it energizes me. It makes me almost feel like giddy with excitement while I'm working on it. It feels playful, like I'm returning to like the little Carolyn version of myself and getting to like play on the page. That is like really the first answer to the why. Because at the end of the day, I think you can like create with all of these humanitarian intentions, but that like intrinsic motivation of the way that writing makes me feel is what's actually going to bring me back to the page every day.
Yes. And when you offer that to yourself, you are ultimately able to give it to others. And so it is the gift that keeps on giving. And you know what? This conversation could be going on forever because there's so many gifts in it, right? We could be the gift that keeps on giving. I like to keep these relatively short. So we are going to wrap up. And so I'm going to end with one final question. You are doing so many incredible things in the world. You have such a wonderful way of thinking about self defense and helping us reframe how we see self defense. What are the best ways for people to connect with you and to learn more about what you're up to?
Definitely. I appreciate you asking. So, the two best ways to connect with me right now are first through my Substack. The URL for my Substack is https://yourpowers.substack.com. And on that Substack, I offer really concrete self defense practices for physical self defense, but also a lot of posts that are talking about more of this metaphysical of how do we protect time, space, energy to be the best version of ourselves. And then the other place that you can follow me is on Instagram, and that's at my name. So that's Carolyn Fallert, CarolynFallert. And there I share similar content. So some physical self-defense practices, but then also reflections on that topic kind of more broadly in life.
Well, all of that will be in the show notes, and I hope that all of you sign up for Carolyn's Substack and that you follow her on Instagram because she's doing so many fun, interesting, and playful things online. Thank you so much for being with all of us today, Carolyn. It has been an absolute joy, and I just can't thank you enough.
Yeah, well, it's been an honor. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Carolyn, please see the show notes for this episode. But before you go, I would love it if you would text the show if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or leave a comment on YouTube with the answer to the following question. What's the biggest obstacle you face when trying to protect your time for your writing? A, competing responsibilities like work, family, or other commitments. B, lack of motivation or inspiration. C, difficulty setting boundaries with others. Or D, self-doubt about the value of my writing or your creative work. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. And speaking of your thoughts on the podcast, I'd love to give a quick shout out to Trisha L., who shared on Spotify that she just bought Jane Friedman's new book, The Business of Being a Writer, and W. Kara SCFOR for your kind words about my episode with Saman Akbarzada. It was so lovely to hear from the two of you. And listeners, if you haven't contacted the show yet, I'd love to hear from you too. Until next time, remember that your story matters, and as you work on it, you change lives, especially your own. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I truly couldn't do this podcast without your support. If you love this episode, here are 3 simple ways you can keep this show thriving. 1, subscribe or follow Writing Your Resilience on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube so you never miss an episode. 2, leave a 5-star review to help others discover the podcast. 3, join my engaged writing community by signing up for the Writing Your Resilience newsletter. As a thank you, you'll receive a free copy of Write More, Fret Less, a toolkit for gaslight-proofing your writing practice. Have feedback for the show, a topic you'd love me to cover, or questions you'd like me to answer? Drop a comment on YouTube, text the show, or email me at writingyourresiliencepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, keep writing, keep growing, and keep showing up for yourself. Your story matters, and I am so proud to be writing alongside you.